that the EU is facing also in neighborhood. And therefore, it is proper to look at EU enlargement and whether we do need a new approach to address these issues. I'm particularly happy to have two prominent persons with us, both ladies, which is very much welcome. One is Željana Zovko from Croatia. She's an MEP from Croatia with a big history of involvement in European international affairs. And Ivanna Klympush-Tsintsandze from Ukraine. She was formerly Deputy Prime Minister responsible for European integration and Euro-Atlantic integration, and also now is member of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine. So welcome here, and I hope that we could discuss the new enlargement challenges. One thing that one has to remember is that we look at enlargement or we look at accession. It's the same process, but enlargement is seen from the EU side as what happens when EU got enlarged for new countries. On the other hand, we've got accession. So we look from the point of view of candidate countries, how they are going to get prepared and what to do in order to accede to European Union. I have been following this process in my own country. I know that it's a difficult process. And then the question obviously becomes what we could do now in this extraordinary situation. Enlargement process was not really progressing recently very quickly. So it was discussed for a long time with candidate countries. The question is whether in these specific, difficult, tragic circumstances, we could have or should have a new approach. Therefore, maybe I would first turn to you, Ivanna, to put you a question, because Ukraine has, right after Russian invasion, has put forward application for the EU membership. But how it could happen? I mean, what could the stages could be? I mean, how you expect that this accession will be realized?
Well, thank you for having me here on this panel and this discussion. I think unprecedented times require unprecedented answers, and the challenges should be met with courage, with dignity, with resolve that is based on values. And that is exactly what is being tested at this particular moment within the EU and within the free world, from my perspective. Even all the processes that are connected with the first, second, third, sixth package of sanctions, those we see how they are going through difficult discussions and are being formed in accordance, I hope, from understanding that values that are really defended, those are the values that matter. So the same thing with regard to enlargement. We do understand very well that there are countries within the EU who are opposing the whole mere idea of enlargement. There are countries that are using this possibility to think how to transform the EU in this particular moment, because we see there are problems and difficulties in terms of decision making. That is also something to be put on the table. And there are countries that are cautious with regard to accepting new members, because they believe that that could kind of reshape the checks and balances within the EU. So I think even though there are these issues, today we should not be really tied up in the exclusively bureaucratic legalities. I think some of the steps that should be taken in this particular moment should be actually showing the standing up of the EU to the new challenges that are presenting themselves in the wider Europe and across the globe. So therefore, from Ukrainian point of view, we believe that based on merits, what we have already achieved, fulfilling the association agreement, reaching the visa-free regime by also transforming our country, turning our trade towards the EU and having more than 43% of our trade already with the EU because of all the transformation that has been happening, and because today we are every single day fighting to defend what we believe in. And our major guilt in this war is twofold. First, that we are Ukrainians, that Russia believes that we do not exist. And secondly, because we wanted to build the country democratic, based on values, based on the rule of law, based on freedoms, and that is something that Russia cannot accept. So from our perspective, it is the time for the EU to show courage and to actually take that step of providing Ukraine with the candidate status at this particular moment to embed us in the possibility to build this country the way we believe it should work. And that is something that where the courage is needed, political will is needed, and I am saddened to say that unfortunately today we do not still have that unity. And that does not mean that in any way Ukraine is crossing the way for any countries from Western Balkans or from any other countries who are aspiring to join also from the eastern neighborhood of the EU. But that means, I think, also showing to the enemy that is standing against everything that we all believe in, to the Russian Federation, that it's not up to Russian Federation to decide what is the fate of people that they have chosen for themselves.
Could I have a follow-up question? Because you have rightly mentioned about candidate status. We are talking about the stages of
Right.
getting into the European Union. So the candidate status is a first stage to have. But actual accession can happen when you've got adoption of the EU acquis, when you've got the same type of institutions, when you've got guarantees for rule of law and implementation of the EU legislation. So, but this can happen over a long run. But then as a first step is a candidate status to open the whole process. Do you see a kind of an intermediate maybe stage or intermediate solution before the full accession could happen? How it could be?
Well,
For example, there were some proposals of political union or political community. I mean, this type of things.
Well, I think we should be aspiring for real membership. I do not think that we should go for any substitute or second-class European community that is being suggested. And I think that even the French president does not really know himself what exactly he means by this political union when he's putting this card on the table. I think it would be totally wrong to have like Europe of two speeds, or totally wrong to have Europe of first class and then some secondary or some just aspiring Europe or whatever. So therefore, I think candidacy status and then engagement and full devotion, both from within Ukraine and from within the European institutions and member states, to actually transform the country in accordance to the acquis, to norms, and so on, because we Ukrainians, we want to be a strong member of the EU. I do not want us to be, pinpointed as for example, right now there are problems in, for example, Hungary with like rule of law or with some freedoms. I don't want to be that type of a country that would be a troublemaker. I would like Ukraine to be an exemplary member of the EU, and that means a lot of internal work, but that is possible. So intermediary would be having all the instruments of getting into the single markets. I think that our work with regard to visa-free regime is actually showing that it is possible to deliver upon, and that we are capable of doing this within Ukraine. And if we have the goal, we have the promise, if we have the clear perspective, then it is something that that is possible. And you know what? Just one step backwards. When we were negotiating association agreement years and years ago, unfortunately, Ukraine was not given the European perspective. And I think that is one of the lessons learned, as was the non-decision of NATO back in 2008 that has led to this drastic war that Russian Federation is today fighting against the free world and against Ukraine as on the forefront. I think all of these lessons learned have to be finally taken into account, and the responsibility has to be absorbed also by the EU on that, of non-action, of appeasement to Putin because someone believes that he has the right to build the great power, quote and unquote, and have his empire to be restored. I think all of this should lead us to actually much more courage on the European level.
Now, Željana, to you, because I think that equal challenges are facing Balkan countries, and you know the region very well, and you could tell how it compares to the situation. What is aspiration of countries over there? How you would compare the accession process of these countries from your point of view, compared also to Ukraine?
Yeah, Western Balkan is a story that started after the war. The European perspective was promised as a sign of enlargement and appeasement territory for Western Balkan and also for peace and security for European Union. And the story started in 1999 in Sarajevo. Croatia gave a big impetus by organizing Zagreb summit. And recently we had organized, 2 years ago, 20 years later, we have organized the summit in Zagreb under Croatian presidency of the Council in order to change French approach to the enlargement. Because European Union is going through a crisis, of its institution, it's going through a crisis with its public opinion, and the enlargement process has been stalled. A lot of people in Western Balkan have lost illusion that one day they will become a European family. Unfortunately, this aggression on Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, has opened the new perspective for Western Balkan and for Ukraine and for Eastern Partnership as well. Few years ago, you wouldn't be able to talk to French public or Netherlands. We are in Netherlands today. This is the most skeptical country on the enlargement issues, on visa issues. We still don't have a visa for Kosovo. We still don't have a candidate status for Bosnia and Herzegovina and Kosovo. We still have countries that have not started negotiations. I just came from a trip with Foreign Affairs Committee to Tirana and Podgorica, and people are asking what is going on in Europe. Have they lost hope that one day we will become a family, or do they still count on us? So in a way, what is happening with Ukrainian candidacy and all these sympathies that we are seeing here in the political circles are helping also Western Balkan to reinvigorate its motivation for the accession. But on the other hand, we have to really ask ourselves, are we going to promise something that is not realistic, or are we going to do we want our societies first to be transformed? And societies and the countries that we want to see in European Union. Because European Union members, as you just rightly stated, they have to abide by the rule of law. They have to be a good and responsible members. And enlargement process is a transformative process for the societies. I don't think that Western Balkan can wait any moment, because that's a peace and security issue. The same situation like in Ukraine. As much as the war is dangerous for eastern side of European Union, Western Balkan poses a great threat for the southern borders of European Union. So all the leaders have seen what these security threats can mean for security of our citizens inside the Europe. But I think that we have to take all the ideas that are being floated around and also to have our own reflections and to say what sort of speed Do we want to see and are we realistic that we are going to transform these societies in such a short speed in order to comply and in order to use the funds that are being promised? I'm IPA 3 rapporteur, co-rapporteur for Western Balkans. So we have 14 billion euros that allocated for Western Balkans. Half of these countries still don't have absorption capacities to use these funds. They still don't know how to use it. Administration has not changed. Every time they change, the elections happens, they change the administration. And it's still politicization of all the process. So I think that lots of honesty has to be among the politicians, and sentiments will not buy us a free ticket, because I'm the strongest advocate for the enlargement. But in order to convince the publics in France and in Netherlands and in all the other countries that are skeptical about, because there are many others who are hiding behind these countries, we have to have more open talks about what enlargement means. Lots of people will go to jail after this, more they're becoming members, more and more people will be accountable for many of the things that they don't want to be seen in the public. So, but for me, in the end, the whole issue of the enlargement is a peace and stability issue. So for the societies that we want to see in European Union, this is peace and stability issue. It's for our borders, and it's also for European citizens, as well as for the countries that are going to join. So Croatia welcomes very much Ukraine. It's the greatest friend of the Ukraine. It's a symbolical message as well to give candidate status, but we want real negotiations. We don't want Ukraine to lag behind. We don't want Ukraine to be like a Turkey for many years as a candidate. We want Ukraine fully transformed in European Union, full-fledged members. And we want the same situation with Bosnia and Herzegovina, with Kosovo, and with all the other countries in Western Balkan, because without this closed circle, without this family of values, of rule of law, respecting of human rights, we cannot talk about European project being successful.
Let me be very clear. Ukraine is not asking for the back door.
No.
Ukraine understands very well that it means hard work. But it also means that there has to be a political decision on behalf of the Union and engagement of all the institutions on all levels to actually deliver their part of work. And I believe that it also gives the EU a great additional positive leverage on how to achieve those declared values. Because today, some of the values here in the EU, I'm sorry to say, and that's, unfortunately is true, have been declared for years, for decades, but a lot of people have forgotten that they also have to be defended. And that's another challenge that, and some fresh wind, if you want, that can be brought in by such nations as Ukrainian one.
Ivanna has been pleading for political approach, as I understand, for starting the process, for giving a candidate status and so on. But do you think that there is a conflict between political acceptance of the process and the individual merits of the countries when they have to progress in negotiations, finally, when they are being for accession? So whether a political decision is valid, is important, is something which is required at the beginning of a process, whereas for ending of a process, what is required is individual merits. It means progress in adopting acquis, progress in bringing all the institutions into place, and so on.
I can tell you from Croatian experience, I don't think that there is any country that had to do triple works like Croatia has done, because following the accession of some countries that didn't have to do this job. So we know the hard way, and we were conditioned on many issues, issues that are not that today are just not. It cannot be explained why Croatia was so much put on hold. But political, I would say, it's a political courage that is required. It's a visionary approach from the leaders. These are the leaders that we are lacking. I mean, I would say that Andrej Plenković is a great leader who has this vision. That's why he organized during the Croatian presidency summit in Zagreb to show that this is peace and security issue, enlargement. And this is something that we need today. We fully support Manfred Weber and Ursula von der Leyen, Roberta Metsola. All the EPP fully supports this enlargement and Ukraine membership as a political wisdom approach and a political courage, because eastern borders cannot be safe without the country that aspires to be a member. I mean, a year ago, you couldn't discuss this issue because it was you couldn't imagine Ukraine becoming a European Union member. But this tragedy has brought us down to earth, and we understand now that the European project is not a viable project. It's not a safe project without you being.
But that's a very good introduction to the next question that I had. Whether EU will be different, whether EU will have to change after having many countries acceding. I mean, is there anything that EU should prepare on the EU side to accept not only Ukraine, but all those aspiring countries from the regions which are in a difficult situation for having this element? So is there anything that you have to see as a change within the EU?
It's a competition. I mean, it's a competition, and it's a fresh blood, fresh idea, and a new approach, less bureaucracy. This is what we need with the EU, with the new EU countries. EU is, I mean, when Charles Michel is talking about geopolitical EU, when Macron is talking about different, I just see this as just an addition to the enlargement, because we need this strategic sovereignty. EU with its territorial enlarged and being dependent on itself, not on the other continents, other countries, having good transatlantic relations with America and all our transatlantic partners. This project cannot succeed if we don't have all the countries really on the borders to be integrated in a project. So EU will have to adopt, will have to change. EU will become just less bureaucratic, I guess. Maybe we should rethink and deepen during this transformation the functioning of our institutions, and we will understand that something that we have lost many years ago, that the EU has started as a peace project, and it should continue as such.
Ivanna, do you think that EU will change when Ukraine will join? That by acceding to European Union, you will make a change to the EU as well?
I think in the meantime, while we will be going through the process, and I really hope that it won't take any decades, as some politicians would like to portray it, because we know the example, for example, of Slovakia, that was 3 years of this transformation. Maybe we can aspire for something of that type of speed. I think that the European Union will have to change. Will have to change because it's the flexibility, the speed, the necessity of less bureaucracy is needed to respond to all those challenges that are appearing. And that's not only the challenge of the war today, but that's what we've seen over the last couple of years with the need to respond to COVID. With the need to rethink how we are operating and so on. And that's probably not the last challenge that we are seeing. So, and that will be driving the change, maybe even with in terms of decision making on some of the issues. So that also could be one of the things. And I think we'll only benefit from this perspective of updating, modernizing, if you wish, because obviously when there are a couple of countries getting together and creating the single markets, that's one thing. When you have already dozens and a couple of dozens countries and it's expanding, definitely you have to ensure that you are fine-tuning the procedures that will give you the results quickly and efficiently for the people, that is needed for the people.
It's easy to say that EU should become less bureaucratic, but in reality it means that you have to think about mechanism inside, and it means also that you have to change treaties probably. Is the European Union should European Union think about changing the treaties because of the wave of possible accessions?
That's very idealistic to think that we will be able to change the treaties on the way to enlargement. I think that's the most difficult part. We should, but that's very unrealistic that we can do it at this moment.
Do you think that enlargement would be a proper response to the challenge that we have? It's a historical situation now, whether enlargement would be a kind of a thing that would be, up to the challenge that we face right now in Europe, in a larger Europe.
Yeah, I think it's one of the very important cornerstones answers, parts of the answer to this challenge, in order to actually, yes, come back to this, the whole idea why the EU was actually formed, not exclusively only as economic union, but a project for peace. So therefore, enlarging the sphere of peace and the security, that is something that would be the correct response. But I understand that this is not this focus of this discussion, but I also think that NATO should also step up to the challenge. And I think it's also about NATO enlargement and the decisions that have to be taken on that side, and then they will be overlapping and just supporting each other.
Thank you very much for this contribution. I think that it was very important to look both from accession point of view, but also from the EU and enlargement point of view. We are not solving these issues. We are just looking at the challenges, but I think discussion has to continue.
Right.
For sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Such a lively debate. Please give applause to our excellent panelists and the moderator. So I would also like to draw your attention to the screen on my left. You can follow live what is happening at the EPP plenary. And to our online audience, let me invite you to a virtual coffee break before we resume again exactly in 1 hour. See you at 5.